In this video, we're going to talk about breeding grunts. And to get started, let's learn how to actually control the call and make it work so that you can make the proper sounds with the proper volume so you can get the correct emotion and actual specific language right, okay? So when we're talking about breeding grunts, they're longer. A typical grunt is just a contact grunt, is just like, okay, or a tending grunt, whatever you want to call it. When you start getting into breeding grunts, now they're getting emotional and they're getting fired up. And just imagine like how a Jake turkey is. He gets so revved up, he just can't handle it. And that's where these guys' brains are. They are so hormonally charged that the emotion just multiplies by so much compared to a normal part of the season. And actually to a point where they're willing to kill other deer just to be the one to be able to breed them. It's a big escalation of emotion when it comes to bucks, okay? So the buck grunt is more of that elongated, maybe a little bit louder, not too loud, type of a call. Let me do one here for you. Okay, now, you notice that the inflection and the volume increased, and what I was doing there was adding more air pressure. I started choking down so I could get the sound started and get it going, and I lengthened it out, and it, because that's like, the emotion, you know, I'm looking for a doe, or I smell a doe, or my emotions are high, okay? And there's other variations of it, like the growl and the roar, which can even be, I would say, crossover into the frustration mode, okay? Or distress mode even. So I've heard it at a deer farm when they were giving them shots. I've also heard it when a doe locked down and a buck was on her. He couldn't get her to stand up because he wanted to breed her really bad, and she was in estrus. She was just dead tired. And he went up and he'd nudge her and so those are different ways that you can use that sound. So the roar or the growl is more like this. Now you got to choke this call down, okay? And you want to add that air so you can distort the reed and get that and that explosion. And this is probably the highest volume call that it is the highest volume call that a buck will make, okay? And you can add inflection into that, you know, if it's a distress or if it's super emotional, you can change the tone of it as you're releasing it, okay? But all I'm doing is I'm choking that call down tight till I can feel the reed distorting, and then I'm just releasing it. You hear that distortion? That's the sound I'm trying to hear before I release it. Now, I wouldn't do a whole bunch of those like that, but you throw out one or two of them, and it's loud, and you could get the reaction of other deer, especially during the rut. Like I explained, when there's does in estrus, they'll come running in. So in that scenario I talked about using this call, that buck did it to the doe because he was frustrated. I mimicked him, okay? And honest to God, 3 to 4 other bucks came in and were on that perimeter looking to see, hey, can I take over this breeding scenario or am I not big enough? So be prepared for that too. Look around. It may not be just the one buck you're looking at and trying to call. You could be calling in bucks from all over. So it's a good cold calling tactic as well. Now, there's one other type of a breeding grunt that, to be honest with you, we kind of discovered by accident. Not really by accident, but it was more of a myth, you know, that we heard. It was called, we named it the croaker sound. And there's a video out there on the Deer Society called the croaker. It was Rod White told me about it. I shook my head and almost laughed like there's no way a deer does that. But they do, and we have it documented, and it is effective. So croaker sound is a long 5 to 10 second long grunt with a upward volume and pitch, and then it comes down slowly. And it goes a little bit like this, deep and guttural. Okay, that doesn't even sound like a deer would do that. And you can even do it longer than that if you got enough air in your lungs. I'll try one more. And you notice how when I got it opened up at its peak, it was really distorted. That's what you're looking for. And that's gonna come from a deer that's a super old age structure. And my take on it is he's just saying it's like, I am the king of this area. And what a lot of people may not understand is the bucks that chase the does probably aren't as successful, and I know they're not as successful as the bucks that are of the big age structure and the genetics, the starting quarterback, if you will. Those does know that buck. They can smell him a mile away. They know exactly who that is when they smell that buck. And when he comes into that area in an early, calm, crisp morning and he lets out that croaker sound, he's letting him know, I am here. Let's get going. Let's get it on. It's time. I need another doe. I just finished up what I was doing. It's time for another doe. That's what that's all about. Now, you can use that a couple ways. One is if you have a big age structure buck, you do that, it will turn him inside out. And don't be surprised if he comes walking right underneath your stand. Watch how it worked in the croaker video on the Deer Society platform. So those are some different ways that you can use the breeding grunt. Once again, it's probably the highest emotionally charged sound a buck will do, the highest volume. Be careful not to blow deer out. If the most important thing I can tell you, if you visually see a deer and that deer is looking at you, don't call directly to that deer. Okay, you have to throw that volume away and somewhere else. If there isn't a deer around and you can be more aggressive with your calling, it's called a cold calling, and a lot of times it'll bring those big bucks in. And one more tip, if you do some breeding grunts and sometimes it'll get them bucks interested or maybe they'll hang up on you, throw a little doe estrus bleed in there to make it more believable and create that illusion that there's an actual buck breeding a doe right there. And that is gonna drive that buck to come right where he heard that sound. So some of the best times to use this tactic with this emotional calling of a buck is really close to that rut area, right when them first does are coming into estrus, when the does are in estrus, and toward the end of that breeding season. Early season, you're gonna drive deer away from you. Late season, you're gonna drive deer away from you. So if you practice these strategies and you become realistic and you use them during the right times of the year, in the right scenario, the right way, it's gonna amaze you how successful you can be in the field.